Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on our live stream at Salty Ginger Talk. I appreciate you guys coming back. So we've got Jim Marsh, who's our guest tonight. Jim actually filmed an episode with us that we have not released yet. So his episode is yet to come on the Salty Ginger Talk podcast. But he did a great job, and he's got a ton of wisdom and experience. And so we thought he was a great option for our live stream. And he is up and said he was available tonight, so we've got him with us. So let's bring Jim into the live stream now. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Joe. Good to see you again.
How are you? Yeah, like were you having withdrawals? You've been having withdrawals since it's been so long?
Yeah, it seems like it's been ages.
Yeah, I was just telling the listeners before you came on that you filmed a regular podcast episode with us that we have not released yet, but we'll let them know that it's up and coming. I think it's coming up in the next week or so, if I remember right.
That's great. I had a good time.
Yeah, I did too. I was really pleased that you were available tonight. So I was going to do a solo live stream tonight, but I'm glad we got you. So I wanted to start off with a little different tack, largely because during our interview, but when you were on during our conversation, you'd referenced your grandchildren several times, and I love that. Family is at the core of everything I do, and I attribute it to a lot of my success. The fact that I've got a great family and a great wife, and my kids have grown up. I have 3 boys, and they've all grown up, and they're all out in the world and productive members of society. They got their problems like anyone else does, but I always say they got the right things wrong with them. We don't have drug users. They're respectful to women. They all hold down jobs. They own houses. They're contributing. And I'm curious because you kind of moved around a lot. You've worked in other countries and those kind of things. How did you manage to do all that and still keep your family at the center of what you do? Because it's very obvious you're very connected to your family.
Well, yes, I got 2 boys and a girl, a boy, girl, boy. So and 4 grandchildren at this point. 2 of my boys are lawyers. One's family law. Another one is corporate law for an auto insurance company. And my daughter works in, a claims department within a auto insurance company and she's a trainer of other people, and she's just enjoying the heck out of that. And, like any kids, there's always challenges as they're growing up. And I was a road warrior for a period of time. And if I go back, I started like with my oldest boy, I was a baseball coach for him. I was his coach in baseball. And it was a great opportunity, but then I got, sort of increased responsibility with the job, and they suddenly wanted me to start traveling a little bit more. And the worst part was, we were in a game, we were losing. It was like the 5th inning, and I had to leave to go to the airport.
Oh no.
And it's one of those situations where I just hated to go, but I had to because I had to make a flight. And I had to give up coaching because I couldn't rely on my schedule. And it sort of broke my heart. But, every weekend I was there for my kids. We took them to church on a regular basis. We brought them up right. And like you say about your boys, they didn't smoke. We didn't smoke in the house. We didn't drink in the house. They grew up the right way. My oldest boy, when he went to Purdue, he was always a designated driver, and he would, often take people to the wrong location. And then when they complained the next day, he'd say, I dropped you off where you wanted to. How'd you get where you ended up? And they could never remember. So gives you a sense of his type of humor.
Yeah, exactly. I was the designated driver as well. I've never been drunk in my life. That's not like just a statement of fact. It's not a value judgment. at all. It was just never my thing. But like, I got invited to everything because I could get people around, because I wasn't drinking. So, people underestimate the social value of being the designated driver. You're awful popular when you're the designated driver, But
Definitely.
no, I appreciate that, because like there's trade-offs. Like I wasn't, I was similar, and you've been successful in your career. I've been successful in my career, but that's an enabler, is the way I always thought about it. Was it allowed my wife to stay home and raise our kids and instill the values that were important to us.
Yeah.
And we set up our relationship with there were certain things that I was responsible for and certain things that she was responsible for. Now, we always talked about those things and tried to gain agreement on those things, but when we weren't quite aligned, if it was in my area of expertise, I kind of got final call. Conversely, if it was in her area of expertise, she kind of got final call. And I'm curious how you set up your relationship, how you and your wife handled those scenarios, especially with kids, right? It's almost always some with a kid when you wind up in a disagreement. At least in our house, it was.
Well, very similar. In fact, I mean, when I traveled quite a bit for a corporation, she would take care of things at home. When I would show up, and I would take on sometimes the more disciplined capabilities. But we also had the benefit of her mother and father lived about, at one time we were about 15 minutes away from them. We went to DC for about a year and a half. And when we came back, we were probably about 45 minutes away. But she was in a very tight family unit.
Yeah.
She had a lot of aunts, cousins. I mean, myself, I just had really my mother, father, and a brother, and two brothers and a sister. And that was it. So it was a totally different dynamic from a family unit. I was, really sort of isolated from a family. Every once in a while, we might have a family reunion to go to, but I never knew the people because they are not around me. I go with her family. They were so close. I mean, every Sunday was at Babe's house, Babe and Pop's house. They would have dinner after church. And I don't know how that woman did it, but she had enough food for an army, and it always kept coming. But it was just one of those family get-togethers that, everyone was sort of involved in everybody's life. And it was a unique situation for me to see that. And that just continued with the kids as well, because they had close family around them. They got a chance to experience that. My wife, when I restarted the road warrior routine, where I was gone 5 days out of the week, quite a bit, we made that decision because I could have taken another corporate job at the time, and we could have moved it, but the kids were, heavily involved in school and sports and activities. So we made a conscious decision. She would stay with the kids and I would travel. Now, for my daughter, it was really hard because she was in field hockey, and all her games were usually on Thursday nights, where I was always gone. But at any time there was a tournament on the weekend, I was there. So anytime I was available, I'd make sure I was present to celebrate what was going on, any type of sports, any type of plays. Those are some of the things we always made sure that the kids understood that I would be there. And they knew if they, as you got older, if they needed me and they had to talk to me, I was a phone call away.
Yep.
So it was never a situation where I was totally out of the picture. And when I would call back home, because even when I'm traveling, I would call home every night.
Yep.
To see what was going on.
I did too.
I needed to.
That's funny. I did the same thing when I was on the road. I always called home every day.
Yeah.
And
that's just something you do.
Yeah, we're old enough that it used to be really expensive to call home when you were traveling. You remember that?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Definitely. It was. Especially, when the first cell phones came out, it wasn't cheap.
It was not. No, it was not.
No.
Yeah.
I had my first brick back then.
Oh, you had the old one, the military phone? I called them the military phones.
Well, it wasn't quite that much, but I had an old Ericsson that was probably about the size of a small brick. It was heavy. I would drop it on a regular basis because it would fall off my belt. That was crazy.
Yeah, and I bring the family up because I feel like we as a society have kind of devalued how important it is to have family, especially as it comes to raising kids. And before anyone freaks out, it's not a value judgment. I'm not saying you're a bad person if you have a unique family situation, not at all. However, I feel like we've kind of rationalized that it's okay to make decisions whereby kids wind up with a single parent or with a tough environment to grow up in. And it's really hard to instill values in a consistent and disciplined way. And I think it's one of the challenges that we have in our society today. I'm kind of starting to see this younger generation. And look, it's kind of funny, right? So I'm 54, you're around my age, maybe a little bit older. So we've got a lot of life experience under our belts. And so our views have been tainted by our experiences, and I'm more than willing to acknowledge that. But I also know those things work because I've seen them work over and over and over again. And I need to call out what we know is right. And what is right for kids is some type of stable environment with people that care about them. And that's what a family is, Yes. And I feel like we've devalued that as a society. I'd be curious to hear your take on that.
Well, quite right. I mean, as I mentioned, we made a conscious decision that my wife would stay at home and be with the kids because we didn't want them raised by somebody else.
Yep.
And that was a conscious decision we made when we first had kids. And we talked about, does my wife go to work? We sent them to daycare. We really didn't want that. We wanted them to grow up with, my wife always there. There's always somebody available that they knew. If we needed to take them someplace, we had family we could take them to. That was just something that we decided on our own that we were going to make sure our kids took priority. I know my grandkids, I've got, 3 grandsons and a granddaughter. I finally got my princess. So I was, in fact, my daughter-in-law who has the granddaughter, when she had the first child, which was a boy, she's, I'm sorry, I know you wanted a princess. I don't care. I got to, he's healthy. He's great.
Yeah.
And then when the granddaughter came, it's like, you got your princess. I said, hey, I'm happy. I'm happy no matter what. But their lives that they have a little bit different is a little different because they almost just circumstances will require them to actually work. They don't have that freedom. But one of the things that my wife has done is she's actually been watching the grandchild.
Sure.
The first 2, she watched them up until the time they started going to preschool a little bit. But she would also pick them up and spend time with them. And we go to the park, take them to dinner, lunch, and have them around all the time. We're doing the same thing with the other grandson right now, where she trades off with the daughter-in-law's mother and watching the kids 4 days a week, sometimes 5 days a week. But again, we're involved in the kids. We're helping them out, and they're seeing values that we have, and we try not to be the overly strict grandparent.
Oh yeah.
Give them a lot of freedom because if we get tired of them, we can give them back.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's one of the benefits of being a grandparent. You can give them back.
The shelf life is short. It's so I love all those things you're talking about because they're exactly kind of the way I see things. Like I'm not just having, I just don't want to have people on that disagree with me. We happen to agree on this subject, but mine, like I've done a lot of thinking about this and a lot of research on it too. And people love to, I guess a phrase that's very popular is a better way to say it is toxic masculinity. I don't like that phrase because the behaviors I hear described when people talk about toxic masculinity are not masculine behaviors. So abusing women is not masculine in any way, shape, or form. That's not toxic masculinity. It's fucking abuse, right? I mean, it's real straightforward. And so I kind of did some research on the impact that strong, present male role model brings to families. And there's some interesting statistics out there to support this. So kids that have actively involved fathers are 2 times more likely to graduate high school. 2 times more likely. They're 75% less likely to be teen parents. They're 80% less likely to spend any time in jail. And there's a direct correlation to having a present. And I say present because look, I'm not a male apologist at all. I know plenty of guys that are jerks. I know plenty of guys that are horrible fathers. They're horrible to the people in their lives. I'm not defending all men because not all men deserve defending. However, I also know a lot of really good guys that would lay down in front of a truck for the people in their families and the people in their lives. And I think we're doing a disservice to them to discount the positive impact that they have in people's lives. So from your view, as you've seen things change, like how do you think about that, where we've kind of given, made it easier for single parent households? What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's challenging for single parent households, whether it's the mother or the father, because they're trying to balance, work, the kids, and the friends, and also technology nowadays. A lot of them are, used to be, you had latchkey kids. They come home from school by themselves. They go in, they watch TV. They're pretty much alone. Now it's, technical kids who are basically on their phone or iPad all the time. And there's very little parental concern about what they're doing. And the availability of so much inappropriate material on the internet, whether it's on YouTube or just plain internet itself, doesn't lend itself to be conducive to good life skill development, because that's sometimes used as a crutch. Oh, keep you busy, instead of sitting down at the table and eating together, here, get on your iPad and just, you see it in restaurants all the time. Crying out loud.
Yeah.
6 people at a table and they're all on their phone. No conversation whatsoever. And when the food comes, it's like, oh, you're interrupting me on my phone. Well, why not have a conversation without the phone? It's something that is so simple, but yet that doggone device is like attached to your hand. I kid my wife every once in a while because she's got to always have the phone close by, and she forgets where it's at. She goes nuts. It's like, remember when we didn't have it? It was great. Just like before email. I love the interoffice memo where you had to write down the person's name for delivery.
Oh, yeah.
You put it in the mailbox. It gets sent to them. You get a response a week later. That was almost great. Now, if you don't answer something within 5 seconds of being sent, they're going, where's your response?
It's wild, isn't it? I had a guy send me emails, an attorney that does some work for us. And this was not it was not a deadline thing, because I get sometimes with law, there are deadlines and you have to respond very quickly. Yeah. This was about a month out. He sent me the same email 3 times in 12 hours last week. I finally called him. I'm like, Steve, what are you doing? Dude, I got a lot of emails coming in. So we got over 400 people listening. So thank you guys so much for joining us on the live stream. So Jim's our guest tonight. Jim has a long and diverse background in leadership. He's got a coaching business. So he's kind of an expert on leadership, an expert on building teams, et cetera, et cetera. He's also a husband and a grandfather. And we're kind of talking right now just about the role that family plays in the world. So we'd love to hear from you guys. You can put a comment on our YouTube channel. Our producer will get it to us so we can talk about it, and we can answer any questions you might have, even if it's not a topic we're talking about. Jim's a pretty smart and agile guy. I like to consider myself one. So if there's something that you're interested in talking about or interested in hearing our opinion on, or you want us to bring it up, we'd love to do it. So make sure you just throw your comments out there in the YouTube channel. But yeah, Jim, that interpersonal. So you because of your IT background, it's very interesting because you did a lot of work in IT, but your focus when we talked was always about the people behind the projects you were working on. And it's very easy in our society today. You're right. It's a lot harder now, I think, for parents because there were I was the remote control at my house. My dad would bop me on the back of the head and say, turn to channel 6. channel 6. Channel 2 was ABC. Where I grew up, channel 2 was ABC. Channel 6 was CBS. And channel 8 was NBC. So those were our 3 options. And now there's all these ways that kids can communicate with people and they can get exposed to all sorts of really inappropriate content. Like you said, there's bad people out there trying to get them to do things or say things or send them pictures. But how did you balance that, the need for the IT part to keep moving forward, but focus on the people behind it? How'd you do that in your career?
Well, one of the things I realized early on is nothing happens without the people around you. And one of the key drivers of that is, just the generation of ideas and innovation. So as I started, becoming a manager and a leader, one of the things I would always try and do is challenge people to think themselves or work themselves out of a job.
Yeah.
Get rid of the mundane things, get rid of things that, you can turn to technology about, and then focus on what can you grow into. So I always challenge people to go beyond where they're at and look at, where they want to be and grow. And what I found was if you focus on the people and you really interact with them, they'll do more for you than you would even imagine. And then as a leader, also making sure that if you gave direction or an objective and they sort of went the wrong way with it, you take the responsibility for it because you allowed them to take a risk and do something that may not have worked. But one of the benefits of failing is you learn from that.
Yep.
And so it developed sort of a safety net that, okay, it's all right to fail. Just don't do it 20 times in a row.
The same thing, right?
Yeah. If you're not learning, then we have to have a discussion.
Right.
But the whole emphasis behind that is when you take that bullet, they're grateful that you took the bullet because you didn't blame them. They didn't point out that they were the problem. It's all their fault. And conversely, if they did something well, you pointed out that he did that. It's not me as the leader. I don't take the credit for it. I may take the credit that I brought that person on board, but that's the person that did the success. So they saw that I would provide credit where credit was due, and I would make sure that we had a discussion about learning if there's something that was a failure, but they weren't publicly shamed.
Yeah.
And that really allowed me to get great teams. I mean, that was a tremendous eye-opener for me. And the more that I expanded that in my consulting, areas and always focused on the people, that also allowed me to do a lot of cross collaboration and get people to talk. Because when you have problems, whether it's family or within a company, the more you have the people talk about the issue and look at what's the potential solutions, the next time something comes up, they'll start on their own having those type of discussions. And that's one of the positive things that comes out of that.
Totally. And I love you went where I was going to go, tying it back into family. It doesn't matter if it's work or if it's family. If you focus on people, and it doesn't take a lot. What it takes is consistency. So you don't have to give some fiery speech or some huge motivational input. What you got to do is be present, and people got to know that they can count on you when they need to come and run something by you. But one of the things I try to do in a leadership role is don't bring me your problems and throw them up on my desk. If you come to me with a problem, I want to know what you've done about it. I want to know what your potential solutions are, and then we can work through it together from there. But I already got problems to solve. I don't need your problems to just take on and solve on my own. So you need to put some effort into it before you just come and throw your hands up in the air. And I did the same thing with my kids. Like, what do you like? Okay, what'd you do about it? My middle son, he wound up in this weird situation where we just moved to a new place, and he showed up at a crew practice because one of the coaches happened to be at the gym that we were at. And the coach said, just show up on Monday morning. And so he didn't tell the other coach that my son was coming. And so the coach that was running the practice was really kind of a jerk to my son. And my son called me. He said, hey, they're not letting me practice. And I said, okay, so like, what can we do? How can we problem solve this? Can you shadow? Can you take notes? Can you participate if I sign a waiver? What are the other options that we can do here? And this coach was really a jerk. So I called the athletic director and said, hey, look, I'm all for, like, I got rules and regulations and I understand there's legal liabilities, but you're not going to disenfranchise my kid because you got a shitty coach. I'm a coach and I know what coaching looks like. That ain't it. And so it was funny because the athletic director actually was pretty good about it. He said, I appreciate that you were trying to actively problem solve. I've just found that to be a really good approach. We raised our kids that way. I don't think it's an accident that two of your kids grew up to be lawyers and that your daughter's in a leadership position in training and developing people. I'd be surprised if you didn't take that same approach at home that you took at work.
Well, you're quite right. In fact, I just had a coaching call this morning, and that was one of the things that we talked about. When you go to leadership with a problem, make sure you have some options that you've already thought about to present, so they have something to choose from, or at least have a more in-depth discussion. Because there's nothing worse than just dumping a problem and then walking away. That doesn't show that you're actually thinking about solutions. You may not have the right solution, but at least you have some ideas. And by generating ideas, you're showing leadership that you've thought about it and you've got some different ways to attack it. Maybe they can refine the best way and give you some instructions to move forward with it. So that's definitely the case. I mean, one of the things that I had from my family unit is my oldest boy was basically the test bed. Okay? So he would do things that were sort of questionable, but the other two would see what was happening to him and know, I shouldn't do that.
Yeah, the oldest one always takes the most stripes, don't they? They're always the one that are pioneering things for people.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I was the oldest in my family, so I sort of, did things, questionable at times. But I basically had majority of my growing up was in a single mother, or because my father wasn't around.
Mm-hmm.
He finally came back, sometime later, but we never had a solid relationship.
Yeah.
But my mother was a disciplinary, and she made a comment one time when I was, about 15, 16, and I was getting a little, big for my britches. And sort of, and I was acting up, and she told me point blank, said, "You sleep at night." And I was like, okay. And she would. If I didn't straighten up, I would get a beating when I was asleep. So,
I can get you when you can't defend yourself, right?
That's right. I mean, and she would do it. She was a nurse. She took at the time, 3 kids on her own, went, 150 miles away from her family, became an LPN on her own, and raised us. And she was definitely very strict. She didn't put up with any bull.
Yeah. Look, I think that's good. We could use more of that. We seem to make a lot of apologies and defend kids. I know that, like, when I was in school, if your teacher called your parent and said, whatever, Joe did this in class, my parents would say, what'd your teacher call me with this stuff? Like, they believed the teacher all the time. You had no presumption of innocence back in the day. And now it's like we defend kids instead of supporting teachers. And like, I think that's a problem in society that we've got to look at. Like the whole process, and maybe it's because we've allowed, and I don't know how this happened, but we've kind of allowed societal things to creep into school. I was never taught like political stuff when I was in school. I was taught reading and math and history. And you can argue that history is political because you're getting someone's version of history and maybe they're leaving stuff out. And okay,
Right.
Not the point. But schools now kind of need to be or act like parents. And that was not the case when I was growing up. It was the parents' job to parent. It was the school's job to educate. And I feel like if we had more defined roles around those things now, we'd be in a better spot. I don't know what you think about.
Well, it's the entitlement culture, pretty much. It's also parents who, and it's happened over, the years of slowly eroding parent controls.
Yeah.
And the teachers actually taking more of a control of what kids should learn and do, but yet they're not really providing called a moral background.
Yeah.
It's whatever their belief system is. And instead of teaching the 3 R's, they're teaching belief systems. And then the parents are sort of abdicating responsibility, which doesn't help much because the parents are the ones who should be responsible. But by letting kids do whatever they want, because, in the 80s and 90s, it's a lot more, let's be friends with your kids. Don't be the strict disciplinarian. Treat your kids like friends. No, they're kids. They need to learn right and wrong. So they do something wrong, make sure you discipline them in the proper way. You don't go overboard like they used to do with, our years.
Right.
I probably have the welts on my butt for not, and the soap in my mouth tastes still from different things I did. A lot of parents don't do that anymore because they still want to be friends.
It's
blurs that guideline between parent and child. And the fact that if the kids want something, a lot of parents nowadays, if it's 2-income family, they have the wherewithal to give them. And it's easier to give them something to question and to drive a solution to a potential problem. A lot of them are conflict negligent. They don't want to talk about it. And if they avoid it, it may go away. Well, it doesn't go away. It only gets worse.
That's right.
And plus the instant news that's out there doesn't help matters much, because if something bad happens in Timbuktu, it's going to be probably, everybody's being shown it. They see what's happening, and they may think it may happen here, or they got away with it, I can get away with it too. So the testing of limits is there is no limit what kids can get away with, especially in school, because they took a lot of the disciplinary actions that schools used to be able to impose away.
Yeah, we've got almost 900 people listening. We'd love to hear from you guys, hear your thoughts and opinions on what we're talking about. Drop a comment, tell us where you're at, where you're listening from, or if you got a question or a topic you want Jim and I to kick around, we'd be happy to do that. So yeah, Jim, I agree with everything you just said. I can tell you, I raised 3 boys, and so I feel like I have a lot of credibility, at least as it comes to raising young men. And I told all of my sons when they were about 7 or 8 years old, and they started kind of being, they become more independent. They're around their friends and they start to see different things and think different things. And I told them all, look, I'm not your friend. That's not my job. I'm the one guy in the world that can be your dad. And I take that responsibility very seriously. Now, I would love it if we got along all the time and we could be friends, as well as me be your dad and you be my son. But make no mistake about it, if I have to choose between teaching you to grow up to be a good man and you hating me over the next 10 years, or being your friend and not imparting all of the wisdom that's my responsibility to impart, I'm choosing A every single time. If I could sign a contract right now that said you're going to hate me for 10 years, but you're going to grow up to be a good man, I would have signed that contract immediately, because that was my job. I was the only one in the world that could do it. And I did. I took that responsibility very seriously. And I don't think it's an accident that, my sons treat women respectfully. We don't have substance abusers and et cetera, et cetera. I don't think it's an accident that that happened. Like you talked about your mom being the same way with you. I would love to see more of that in our society today. I agree with you. It feels like people want to give their kids things instead of making their kids earn things. And it's good for your kids to have to fight and scratch and claw for what they get. If you hand it to them, it doesn't mean anything to them,
Well, just like, one of the things I told all my kids, sometimes kids get in fights at school.
Sure.
And what I always told them is never throw a first punch. If you get hit and you hit back, I'm going to support you. But if you throw the first punch, whatever trouble you get at school, you'll get double that at home.
Yeah.
Okay. And they understood that aspect, but they also understood that if they reacted and defended themselves, I had their back. No matter what the school did, I had their back because I told them, and in one situation, I actually informed the principal of that fact because one of my boys was involved in a fight. And that's the question I asked: who threw the first punch? They said, well, this person over here, but then your boy, walloped him really good. He says, good.
Perfect.
What do you mean the good? This is no fight school. I said, no. He did exactly what I informed him to do. Never throw the first punch, but you make sure you finish it if you have to.
Yeah.
Because if you just back down, they're always going to bully you. Your best way is to diffuse a bully is sort of laugh at the bully. And my daughter was great at that.
Mm.
I mean, she was unbelievable. She got bullied a lot, but she turned it around so many times on the bully that I just can't imagine now how she did it all the time. But she just would laugh at the person and say, are you crazy? What's wrong with you? And the bully, defuse the bully immediately because you're not really fighting back or not backing down. You're basically standing up for yourself. So what are you doing here? You're saying that, what do you mean by that? Just asking a question back quite often.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Explain yourself.
Yeah.
Just totally diffuse the situation.
I love the question. Were you trying to insult me? Like,
Yeah.
ask was that supposed to be an insult? Is that what you're trying to do? I don't get it. Like that's worked really well for me.
But it's just one of those things that, as you're working with your kids growing up, there's a lot of different situations. I mean, lying was something that I wouldn't put up with. You can do just about anything, but if you lie, that's really tough. I mean, that causes lots of issues. And my oldest boy, we had a situation where he actually was involved in an accident that he was actually driving before he had his license.
Oh, no.
And then he's, he and his friend with 3 other kids in the car swapped places, and his friend took the tickets. And then, good friend, because he wasn't supposed to be driving, and he was told that. But, about a week and a half later, here comes, the friend's parents and, police officer, and my son goes, oh, Dad, I was driving. Like, okay.
Uh-oh.
So we actually, went to court, and at the time, we said, okay, my son was actually doing a lot of volunteer work. He actually had his picture in the paper for doing volunteer work. It really helped out, with the judge. But in the order, I had the judge delay his driver's license for 1 year.
Yep.
And my son goes, you can't do that. I says, what did you do? You lied. And, in essence, one of the things that could have happened is you could have lost your life and your friends' lives.
Yep.
So that's serious to me. But lying was even worse. So you're not going to have your driver's license. So he waited his full year. You know what he did for his license plate for his car?
He got a personalized one? What was it?
1 year late.
He embraced it. I finally learned to embrace it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, he took the responsibility, but it was sort of a joke. But he understood. And when I mentioned about the other two learn from the older brother, yeah, they learned some of that stuff. Of course, my daughter pulled some stunts that we found out later that was like, oh my gosh, if I would have known about it then, I would have killed you.
Oh my gosh. Exactly. Well, so like this is you and me don't have experience in this, but like we talked earlier about kids having exposure to so much of the world through their phones or their computers or their tablets, however they access the information. If you were a parent now, how do you think you would manage that? Because you have an IT background. If you had young kids, or like your grandkids, well, like what would you like to see happen with your grandkids as it relates to that stuff?
Well, one thing's, we've already pushed the parental controls, especially on the older two, making sure there's definitely parental controls. Also, I know my son watches or listens in on some of the chats.
Yep.
As they're playing some of these gaming things, because I believe quite often some of these gaming programs that are internet based, there's inappropriate people on those things.
Yep.
Trying to be friends. So, as a family law attorney, he's seen a lot of those situations. So he is trying to make sure that he's controlling who's he actually involved with on a regular basis. When they're younger, I'm making sure that what they're doing is mainly educational programs.
Yep.
So that it's a sort of a learning process. And we just reinforce that, but we try and make sure they're not on it all the time.
I mean, have you been watching or aware of that Facebook trial out in California that's going on right now?
I just heard a little bit about it. I haven't heard a lot other than they've determined that a lot of social media has been directly trying to influence kids. It's like, yeah, what else is new?
Yeah, they're saying that they knew that the applications were addictive and they disregarded safety controls to try to get young kids onto it so they could get kind of lifetime users on the platform. It'd be very curious to see. I'm very curious to see how that plays out. I kind of recognized a while ago, I don't know, it was 8-9 years ago. I was, I at one point had like a personal Facebook profile and I posted on there. I love being able to I've moved around a lot, so I'm not around the people I grew up with. And I love to see what they were doing and their families and those kind of things. But I've also never been a style guy. So I went through college on a baseball scholarship and I know a lot of professional athletes and I'm just not impressed by cars and houses and those, like, they're cool. I get it. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I've never had a lust for those things or held them in high regard. But when you're young, you don't have that perspective as much. And so you see people that look a certain way or behave a certain way, or they show that they're flying private planes and going to luxury resorts and blah, blah, blah. And when your brain is forming at those, those formative years, the teenage years are so confusing already. I think we got to figure something out to prevent that from impacting kids the way it's impacting them. But yeah, I'd be curious to hear your take on that with your IT background.
Well, you're quite right. I mean, the entire Facebook group attacks that go on, the bullying, the cyber bullying that occurs. The worst thing that's going on right now is the AI generated nudies using girls' faces.
Good Lord.
And then they're sharing it amongst the school. I mean, that is some of those horrendous things that I've been hearing recently. And those are kind of things that, the IT organization could basically look at the types of posts, the age group, and sort of filter that automatically. If that type of stuff is occurring, they could basically blur it out there is the technology to identify those types of pictures so that they're not being shown, especially if the person is at a certain age level. But they're doing it all the way down into middle school, and I think there was a case not too long ago where a young woman actually committed suicide because of what people were sharing about her that was not true, but put her face on nude pictures.
Yep.
And then she sent it all over the school so everyone could see it. That's just horrendous types of thought. And, part of it is, the lack of morality of what you do with other people. And that's sort of the foundation that we have lost a lot today, because there's no filter amongst, a lot of kids. It's whatever you see, it goes. We put a lot of self-filtering, when we're talking, but on the internet, a lot of people think you're anonymous, but you're not. You're not on the internet.
Not at all.
And what's there is almost always there forever. And so if you don't have a filter and think about how this might impact somebody else, it doesn't help. And some people do it purposely because they want to bully somebody. You see it, on Twitter or now X. I mean, no matter what is out there, there's ways to just sort of the human mindset has just been degraded to such a level that no one thinks about the other person. It's whatever is on your mind, you spill it forward. And sometimes you should keep that stuff in your head. You shouldn't be sharing some of that stuff. I mean, it makes no sense. I mean, you got these teachers that are saying certain things, and you see this on the internet and go, what were you thinking?
Yeah, it seems like
kids.
Yeah, it seems like teachers and nurses in particular have kind of gone off the deep end, and they're posting all this wild stuff out there now. Look, I don't understand why you would wish harm on another person. I get like if we're talking like the immigration issue that is very divisive right now, I understand the empathetic approach. Like, I get it. I'm not a big fan of displacing people that have been here for a long time, but it doesn't change the fact that they're in the country illegally. And we don't pay, in my opinion, we don't pay enough attention to the economic side of that issue. So like, I'm a business owner, you've been a business owner, you are a business owner.
Yeah.
Payroll tax is a good example. So like, we employ, I don't know, about 140 people at any point in time. And we deduct the what is it, 6.5%, 7.5% from their paycheck and pay that as the payroll tax. And then our company matches that because the employee pays half and we pay half. And so there's a tax base that's generated from that. If we've got people that are, because of their immigration status, not able to get a W-2 job and they're working under the table, that's draining the payroll tax. Where if a person who did that job was a W-2, that would be feeding into our tax base. And then, like, while people are here, they need medical care, they need school for their children, they need to live somewhere, they need all of those things. And I totally get it. I don't want people sleeping in the streets with nothing to eat. However, there's only a finite amount of money to take care of people. And if you've got people that are not able to contribute because of their circumstances, but still using the resources, the math just tells you at some point you're going to go underwater. And I think we've already gone there. I've heard lots of people say that illegal immigrants are a net benefit to the economy. I've yet to see math that proves that, because I don't think they're factoring in all of the factors that go into it. And I'm not anti-immigration in any way, shape, or form. I do not support illegal immigration. Just like every other country, we have a right to secure our borders and control who does and does not come into our country. I don't know why that became controversial, but it certainly did.
Well, you're quite right. The cost associated with folks who are on the welfare system, call it that. They come in, they really can't get a job, so they use the services that are out there. Emergency rooms become overfilled because they can't get a regular doctor, so they use the emergency room, and people who actually pay the taxes can't get in for service. Schools, and this is one of the issues with some of the teachers, is the classrooms are filled with folks who, honestly don't speak English and may not have the education level for the age that they are. So everything has to be reduced down to the lowest common denominator, which impacts the overall school capabilities and the resources of a school. And that's a cost. It does come at a cost. I talked with a middle school principal who is just having a challenge in maintaining the educational level and even maintaining the teacher capabilities. I mean, he's fighting to get teachers. He can't find teachers. And when he does find them, they have theory, but they have no real true practical sense. And the older teachers, they don't want to listen to because they're trying to give them, instructions on how to teach practically. And they're totally on the theory mentality and what they learned in a book, which sometimes doesn't really relate to real life. You use it as a guide, not as a rule. And that's, one of the reasons why, in my leadership book, I sort of focus on what's practical.
Yep.
Because a lot of people are talking about theory. You're the boss. You control everything. No, you really don't. Your control comes from your people who work for you, because they're the ones actually doing the job. And if you don't do the job right with them, you're going to have high turnover, high cost. And that's what I call the culture tax. It's a hidden cost for a business. Well, the illegal issue is a hidden cost for most states. California's got a billion plus deficit. They had a surplus. It's now a deficit, largely because of some of the things that they accepted with all the illegals in. It's impacted their entire, budgetary process.
It's more than $1 billion. I think it's closer to like 15 billion, if I remember the last number correctly.
I'm keeping it simple here because it's big. It's really big, and and they talk like billions and tens of billions like it's pocket change.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's really not. I mean, that's one of the hard parts. And we're the only country in the world that really sort of allows unfiltered immigration at the time. Europe was doing that for a while, and now they're pushing back because they can't support it. It's just one of the biggest problems, the Western hemisphere has in dealing with this type of immigration, unfiltered, and the cultural impacts that come along with it, trying to make sure you assimilate, and most people don't want to assimilate. That was the great part of the USA, is people would come to here, they would assimilate and become American and live the American dream. But over the past 30 years, we want to make sure that we have everything in everybody's language. So if you see instructions, you got the same instructions in 40, 50, 60 different languages, which means we have to have government officials with those languages to build out all those documents instead of just having, one common language that we're all trying to do. So I fully support it as well, but legal immigration, bringing people who actually can support themselves, that helps out and also supports the communities that they go into. Why people get so upset with trying to protect bad guys, I don't see it. But what kills me more is, when I said, the teachers and the nurses and what they're saying on the internet about other people. It's like, why do you hate people so much because they have a different opinion? We've all had different opinions over our entire lifetime, but we don't go out of our way to wish people death. I don't understand that aspect of it, and I try, but I just can't understand that concept, because we are a compassionate country and a compassionate culture. So you should be compassionate with everybody and try to understand the viewpoint and how do you work together to get to a common good. Right now, it's so partisan. It's like, I don't even want to see you. They're talking about ostracizing family members because they have a different point of view.
It's crazy, isn't it?
I mean, you've got to be kidding me. Or I can't stand seeing you because you have a different point of view. It's like, to me, that's a mental disease, because you should be able to speak to family. And yeah, there's maybe family members you don't like, but you don't get to the point where you wish them dead.
Yeah, I always try to, Abraham Lincoln had a quote that I loved was, I do not like that man. I need to get to know him better. And it's an approach that I try to follow. So if I find someone's irritating me or like I don't understand where they're coming from, I actually try to get to know them better because I want to understand how they're thinking and why they're thinking that. Maybe they're right. I don't know. Maybe I've been thinking about it wrong and maybe they're right. But that's never going to happen if we just cling to our ideologies and make those ideologies a part of who we are and refuse to look at evidence that says, hey, maybe you're not thinking about this in the right way, or maybe you're not considering all of the factors that you need to consider before you make your judgment. So like I try to watch multiple news sources. I try to watch multiple viewpoints. I try to actively and openly listen to those so that I can have as much information as possible before I figure out what makes sense to me. And I don't know why that became out of style or why it became so hard for people to do, but it sure seems like it is,
Well, in one way, you have to default sort of the current media, the internet, the instantaneous news release, the opinion news versus facts.
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways, the media was always sort of slanted, but the omission of facts sometimes causes people to not understand what the other point is. And that's what it used to be pretty standard. You just get like Joe Friday and Dragnet says, "Give me the facts, man.
Just the facts."
That's. And it'd be great if we just got back to just the facts versus all this theory and personal conspiracy activities that everyone sort of has. But it goes back to sort of what you said earlier, is having a good, strong moral character.
Yep.
And there's even from stack of religion. I mean, if you go back in time, it used to be Catholics and Lutherans hated each other. No end, just because of the religion. And that's sort of gone away somewhat, but there's still sort of the remnants are there. Now, I never could understand that, but it was there. Now you've also got Islam coming in. So you got three major religions that people are sort of going back and forth on and saying you can't stand the other. Well, each has good and each has bad.
Right.
But you take the good parts and you sort of say those are the moral fiber that actually lets people live together in harmony. And that's what you want to try and get to is, maintain that harmonized environment where you can get along. A lot of people used to say, small towns were great. Yeah, they were great because everybody sort of knew each other to a certain degree and they were all in each other's business. My wife grew up in a small town, about 2,600.
That is small.
And I still hear about, a friend of hers whose mother and uncle lived over on this side of this town, and they went to here. It's like, I don't know anything about these people, but she knows that entire relationship and how things went and what they did in school and how teachers remember. I mean, she went to school and she had a teacher that actually taught her mother and said, "You're not going to be like your mother, are you?" I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy.
She started with one foot tied behind her back, huh?
Yes, definitely.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Well, Jim, believe it or not, it's been an hour. Really appreciate
Nice.
you joining us tonight, and really enjoyed our conversation. We will be releasing your regular episode, here in the next week or so, and I'm really looking forward to getting that out in front of our audience. And to everyone that tuned in tonight and everyone that's still tuned in, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate you checking out our live stream. Obviously, you can find it here at Salty Ginger Talk on YouTube every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Sometimes it'll just be me. Sometimes we'll have a guest. We were lucky to grab Jim tonight, and just really appreciate you spending some time with us, Jim.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Sorry we didn't get any questions. I was hoping to get some questions.
Yeah, me too. But we had a lot of people on, but they were keeping to themselves. Yeah, I was hoping to take some questions too, but got a lot of people. Hopefully we'll get people to come out of their shell as we keep moving forward.
Well, I think they will. I mean, this is a good opportunity for people just to have an opportunity to share and listen. That's part of what you're trying to do here. So that's a good thing. And trying to get some comments, and the more different guests you have on, I think is just going to help you out even more.
Yeah, totally. So thanks again, Jim. Really appreciate it.
All right. Take care, all.
Have a great night.
Adios.
All right, guys. Thanks again for joining us tonight. Jim, great guy. We love having conversations with him. He doesn't hold back. He shares what he thinks. He shares his opinions. Look, this is a guy that has, built a very successful life, happy family, good career. He's coaching other people to do the same. And look, we just really enjoy those conversations. Hopefully you do too. Would love to hear from you guys when you're on the live stream. Would love to take questions. You may have a different take, a different opinion. Love to hear those things too. This is a place where we want to have an open exchange of ideas. We're not, going to attack each other. We're not going to fight with each other, but a spirited conversation is always a good thing. So really appreciate you checking us out. Make sure you come back every Thursday night. We didn't do one last Thursday because I actually wound up hurting my leg really bad and was in the hospital getting looked at. So apologize for last week, but we'll be on a regular cadence on Thursday nights every week going forward. So make sure, like, share, comment, subscribe to Salty Ginger Talk on our YouTube channel in particular. That's where we have the most following, and that'd be really helpful if you're able to do that. So thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great night.